Hi folks, welcome back to the Great Indian Cricket Circus. This is Ashwin. Today I'm going to talk about the upcoming Border Gavaskar Trophy that starts in about 10 days time in Perth between India and Australia. Um, India will be aiming for a historic hat-trick of series wins in Australia. The last couple of tours were extremely special. Great memories and some great wins by India. Great grit and determination shown by the team in the last couple of tours. Every tour to Australia has been special. I've been following it since 1991-92. I was very young at that time, so I don't have too many memories of that tour. But I still remember a young Sachin Tendulkar taking on the likes of Merv Hughes and Craig McDermott and leaving a lasting impression. He would go on to have a fantastic record in Australia. So, and post that, I've been following every tour, right from the disastrous 1999 tour where Sachin was the sole shining light apart from VVS Lakshman's 167 in the final test in Sydney. And then, of course, the great tour in 2003, which had some fantastic moments with the win in Adelaide, and India came close in Sydney as well. 2008 was, of course, Monkey Gate. India had a fantastic win in Perth, followed by a couple of disastrous tours under Dhoni, and then the last two tours under Kohli and Rahane, which were fantastic. Now, I'm going to try my best to keep this as short as possible. I'll probably share my views after each of the matches. But one thing that strikes me is the scheduling for this tour. It looks like Australia have been very smart. I'm not sure if it is by design or they've chosen to have this schedule wherein the first three matches are going to be really, really challenging from India's point of view. Especially with coming on the back of the series loss to New Zealand, which was a real shock, like we've discussed in the previous episodes. Now, starting at Perth, Perth is the current ground is, of course, not the old WACA, which was known for its pace and bounce, historic ground. But this ground as well seems to have, of late, been a pitch has been relayed, and from what I hear, it's going to be extremely fast, extremely bouncy, and some of the previous matches on this ground, the test matches, were held in December when it is a lot warmer. And this time it's going to be much cooler, and hence the likelihood of a fresh pitch. So what should India's strategy be? How do India look going into this test match and test series? I'll focus a lot on the first test to begin with a few inputs on my outlook for this tour. And like I said earlier, as we go on, I'll probably chime in on the matches to follow once the tour starts going. Now, one of the striking aspects of the last tour, and I've always maintained this with Indian cricket, especially and it's especially important in Australia, not just from India's point of view, but any team that's toured Australia, selection becomes a critical aspect. I remember Sri Lanka touring Australia, I think somewhere in 2010-11 probably, when they chose an all-rounder in Parvez Mehroof over the fast Lasith Malinga. They wanted to cover their batting, and hence they went for Mehroof. It backfired to an extent where they lost the first match by a huge margin. And if you talk about India, while they had a great series win last time, the tour started off with that debacle in Adelaide. India started off well in the first innings. Kohli made a brilliant 70 odd, if I'm right, he made a 74 under lights, and that was a brilliant knock until he was, and I was furious at that time with Rahane for running him out. Obviously, he had to leave the tour after the first test, but before that, in the second innings, India suffered that historic 36 all out. Now, in that test, if you see India's selection, they went in with Hanuma Vihari, they went in with Ridhiman Saha, and they went in with Parthiv Patel. Now, as well as Mayank Agarwal. Now, Mayank Agarwal was in great form in the preceding home series, and hence it was a fair call. But having said that, and again with Prithvi Shaw, it was worth a try. But going for Saha in place of Pant was a disaster. Hanuma Vihari again, there was no spark that I had seen in Vihari before that tour for him to have warranted a selection in the first test match. While Vihari would go on to help India salvage a draw in the third test match, it still, I would still consider that as a poor selection. Nevertheless, what happened in the second test, post the 36 all-out, was that Kohli had left the tour for the birth of his child, and Rahane took over. And what happened was, because of the 36 all-out, India had to make some changes. And a couple of those changes were in the form of Shubman Gill, who looked brilliant in Australia. Jadeja came back in, and most importantly, Rishabh Pant was back. Now, Australia is a place where, and I have a lot of respect for somebody like Ridhiman Saha. He's a brilliant wicket-keeper batsman, a dedicated trier, very, very good in home conditions as a batsman as well. But Australia is a place where you need an X factor. You see teams from across the globe. I mean, earlier this year you had Shamar Joseph from the West Indies sealing a historic win for them over Australia, a win after a couple of decades. So Australia is a place where you need people with X factor, and you need guys who are mentally strong, and that's why the selection for the first test becomes critical. Having said that, knowing India's conservative nature, I think they would go with an 11 similar to the one that played against New Zealand in the last series. And when I say similar, the batting lineup would wear the same look. I don't see any drastic changes happening there. If I were given a choice, I would go with Gill as opener, along with Yashasvi Jaiswal, and followed by Dhruv Jurel, Virat Kohli, Rishabh Pant, and Sarfraz Khan. And the reason for me going with Jurel is because of his temperament. The guy, whatever international cricket he's played, he's looked the part. In fact, Gavaskar went on to say that he could be the next MS Dhoni. That's a huge compliment, and I completely agree with Sunil Gavaskar there, because of not just his technique, but the way he seems to handle things. And he's had a great start to the tour in the A games, where most of the Indian batsmen have struggled, and he managed to score a couple of very good half centuries. And for that reason alone, I would definitely go with Jurel instead of KL Rahul. But having said that, and this is assuming that Rohit Sharma is not going to be available for the first test. Unfortunately, Gautam Gambhir has already announced KL Rahul as his replacement, so I don't know if Jurel would find a place. It looks hard at this point in time. So if India go in with Rahul, they are going in with a bit of risk. Simple reason being, Rahul has failed multiple times when it has mattered, and he failed in the tour match as well, both times. And for a player of his potential, he looks lost most of the time. The point that I made about Jurel, about the mental strength, Rahul is unfortunately just the opposite of that, and hence I wish I'm proved wrong, but I'm not at this point in time expecting a lot from Rahul if he plays that first test, which is likely to play in Rohit Sharma's absence. And of course, if Rohit plays, then Rahul sits out. You never know. They may prefer Rahul over Sarfaraz. Sarfaraz, again, is an untested quantity in these conditions, but he seemed promising in the Bangalore test, especially in the second innings, where the pitch had a little bit of bounce. Obviously, Indian conditions, Australia is going to be completely different. But given his attacking instincts, Sarfaraz does deserve a chance going into this test match. The bowlers pick themselves, in my opinion. Jadeja and Ashwin should play, and I would go in with 3 seamers. Australia have always done that. There would be temptation to go in with a 4th seamer, but that would deplete India's batting, especially because there is no Shardul Thakur around this time. Nitish Reddy is not an international quality all-rounder by any means at this point in time. He is a promising IPL player, but not tested in international cricket, neither in domestic cricket, in the longer formats. So I would go with 3 seamers. And while Siraj had a great tour last time, I would go in with the X factor of Prasidh Krishna, along with Bumrah and Akashdeep. Again, given India's usual selection policies, they may go with Siraj over Prasidh. I wouldn't call that a terrible decision, but one that India need to be cautious about, because Siraj has not been in great form in the last few months. So this is so once the team is selected, of course, then it's up to the guys to stand up and be counted. But assuming that they go with the team that I suggested initially, I see there is a very good chance of India putting up a good fight. Kohli's form has been poor, to say the least, but his record in Australia, there is something in Australia that gets him fired up. The kind of wickets suit his style of play. He's done well in South Africa as well. The only thing that I see with this Kohli versus the old Kohli is, will he be able to concentrate enough post a very good 60 or a 70? I've seen him lose focus, which is unlike his younger self, who would go on to score a brilliant 100. If he can cross the 70 mark and reach the 3-figure mark in the first test, it's going to do him and India a lot of good. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed that it happens. In terms of the bowling, there would be a temptation to go in with 4 bowlers. Like I said, 4 fast bowlers. Like I said, we don't have an all-round fast bowlers. And given that the last time the Perth, the pitch and in Perth offered a lot of turn in the last couple of days, it became a lot slower than what it started off as. Ashwin and Jadeja should come into the picture. There is a temptation of playing Washington Sundar instead of Ashwin, purely because of his exploits in the last tour as a batsman. But Ashwin was very good in the last tour especially against Steve Smith. So with the leg side trap, even though Washington also picked him up in Brisbane. So that's a toss-up between the two. Now it's if India select this team, I wouldn't rule them out at all. The reason for that is Australia also doesn't have the best of batting lineups. They're likely to have a debutant up along with Usman Khawaja, and they don't have Cameron Green, so they're going to go in with the 3 seamers plus Nathan Lyon. If India can get rid of some of their bad habits of letting the likes of Travis Head get away with the game, India stand a good chance. At the moment, I would say it's 60-40 Australia, but if India can turn up on the first couple of days, it could be a completely different story. Post the Perth Test match, the second one is in Adelaide, and that's the pink ball test. Now, and the third one is in Gabba. So this is the kind of scheduling that India have. The 4th and 5th tests are in Melbourne and Sydney. Tests where India are expected to do well. They won in Melbourne the last time. They've always done well in Sydney because it is the closest to an Indian cricket wicket. If India can get through the first test, it would give them a lot of confidence for the pink ball test. The pink ball test will be a huge challenge. It usually is a test where Mitchell Starc sees himself as a real threat. It's not going to be any different in Perth as well. There is going to be a lot of short pitch bowling this time around. So I am just keeping my fingers crossed that if India are able to get their nose ahead in Perth, it could be a tour which could take everyone by surprise. At this point in time, most experts are predicting a 3-1 or possibly a 4-1 win for Australia. If India can start off in Perth on a winning note, things could be very different. What else can India do to start the tour well? Not much really. I mean, they don't have a practice game. Like I said, it's more or less certain that KL Rahul is going to open. For India's sake, I hope that it is the best version of KL Rahul that presents itself, and not his usual self who lets the team down in critical situations. And unfortunately, I have no choice but to not to mince words, and that's where we stand. In terms of the bowling, Bumrah is obviously going to be key, but I see Akashdeep as a real weapon. Akashdeep, the kind of action and the kind of bounce that he gets could be a real factor in Australia, and watch out for him. I hope that he has a little bit of luck and he keeps his foot behind the line, because I see him amongst the wickets. And if that happens, then it is a real bonus for India. It gives Bumrah a lot of breathing space, especially with Shami not being there. In terms of the X factor, obviously you have Rishabh Pant, who's done well in Australia. I see him being a critical factor, and that's exactly why I see Dhruv Jurel also as an X factor if he gets a chance. Jadeja and Ashwin will have to contribute significantly with the bat for India to have a chance. Jadeja has been on and off with his form. Ashwin, like I said, is coming on the back of a very decent tour of Australia last time. He contributed with the bat in that famous draw in Sydney. He has played some very nice knocks. He has a good back foot technique, and their contributions are going to be significant. Australia is a place where if the middle order and the tail can contribute runs, you win a lot of matches, and I'm hoping for that. So let's see, fingers crossed, and I'll see you soon, probably around the Perth test, maybe after the first day's play, and I'm hoping that India have a wonderful start to the tour.